Chapter 12. Like Lightning in Darkness. Sun seemed beyond shocked to be let free as he looked around wildly, trying to take in his surroundings. His pants were torn up in a few places and he looked frazzled, but he quickly regained his composure. "Dad, thank God you're okay," Ren said with a big hug. Sun was barely able to respond as his red eyes looked up at the massive deity headed toward the east. He peeled her from his body and said, "Ren, you've got to get back," as he pushed her behind him. "I hope you're ready to die, Wukong," Lai shouted as he lashed his ruined whip toward Lin Yu. It didn't touch her and she stood still as stone, her eyes looking down at her feet. "Sun, that creature wants to devour the light of the sun. We've got to find a way to stop it," I called, pointing up to the massive goddess. "Devour the... You've got to be kidding me," Sun said, looking flustered already. I was surprised when Oxhead and Horseface ran up and joined us on the front line. "We'll help this kid take down the Ming Songs. You've got to try and hold her off until we can think of a way to separate Yang Wen from that monster," Oxhead said. Horseface nodded in agreement as Ren stepped up. "I'll help too," she agreed. Sun was still overwhelmed by the suddenness of all this, but I was surprised to see him close his eyes and smile to himself. When he opened his eyes back up, they were glowing bright white, and he said, "All right then," before his aura turned white too, and he leaped up into the sky, riding on yellow clouds as he engaged Mei Ming Song. "Can you take Lin Yu, or do you want help?" Ren asked. "You capture Lai. The other two should be able to handle Li Yu while his shoulder is all busted up," I instructed, and the others followed my orders without hesitation. The two opposing groups spread out just enough to make 3 even battles, leaving me alone, standing face to face with Lin Yu, the last blade of Ming Song. She was standing there with her eyes still on her feet, so I said, "It doesn't have to be this way, you know. I don't want to see you die here if you still have good to put into the world." Lin Yu seemed to take offense to my offer and scowled at me. "You and I have never had families that loved us. What good could we possibly put into the world?" she demanded. "All I've done these past several years is slaughter and kill in the name of revenge. And where has it gotten me? Used and tossed aside like all the rest. All my family does is destroy things in the name of a false image of immortality we'll never achieve. My entire life has been a waste and a lie." "Fine, maybe that's true," I replied, and she seemed mystified by my calmness as I responded. "But that doesn't mean the rest of your life has to be. You can choose to make that change. Right here, right now. Your strength could make the difference in this fight." Lin Yu heard what I said, but her scowl turned to a vicious glare as she took a tight grip on her blade and pointed it to the sky to ready herself. "Then let's see which is stronger, my will or yours." I couldn't help but smile to myself as I said, "Now you're speaking my language." Lin Yu and I charged each other as fast as we could, and she slashed violently at me 3 times, but I deflected her blows before retaliating with a brutal spinning slash that cut deep into her left arm. But like the warrior she was, Lin Yu didn't even flinch as she slammed down on my shoulder with the butt of her sword, knocking me to the ground. I didn't stay down long and spun into a sweep kick, but she leaped right over me as she moved to drive her blade down into my chest. I found this was familiar and moved on instinct, firing a bolt of lightning from my fingertips and making her lean way back just in time to avoid getting struck. I backflipped to my feet and she moved in for a quick slash, but I blocked it and punched her right in the mouth, making her stumble backward a few steps. You've improved quite a lot in the short time I've known you," Lin Yu said with intrigue as she wiped blood from her lips. "I'm a quick study, and a power-up never hurts either," I smugly replied. "Let's hope it's enough," she said before she moved quickly to my right. She was using her top speed now, and if I hadn't unlocked my aura transformation, I probably wouldn't have been able to see her. But that didn't matter anymore. Now that I could sense her chi, she would never catch me off guard again. She approached from behind and went for a violent slash at my right shoulder, so I moved to retaliate, but she hadn't expected it to be a feint. I feinted at her and she moved to block, leaving her wide open for me to give her a dirty slash across the chest and send her sprawling into the dirt. I looked up at Sun to see him holding back Mei, seeming like a fly dueling a giant from the distance. Lin Yu pushed herself to her feet, but was bleeding badly as she held a hand to her chest. After only a few moments, she seemed relieved as the wound closed up, but she definitely lost a lot of blood. Wildly, she took up an aggressive stance with anger in her eyes. I realized that the only way this would end quickly would be if I managed to wound her pride instead of her body, so instead of taking up a defensive stance, I lowered my guard. She looked even more enraged by this, and I couldn't help but smile to myself. She dashed straight at me and threw her whole body into the most powerful slash she could muster, but I ducked it. She took another wild strike at me, and I sidestepped it, but she adjusted her grip and thrust at me just as I stepped out of the way, so I was left with only one option. I retaliated with a vicious slash of my own and knocked her blade from her hands, sending it spinning through the dirt behind her. I thought she was going to dash for it, but instead she just stood there, looking deeply into my eyes. We stared at each other a few moments before her expression softened, and she smiled at me. "All right, you win. I'll help you return things to the natural order," Lin Yu agreed, seeming to have found what she was searching for in my gaze. I nodded to her. "All right then, let's move quickly," I said, turning to get a grasp of the other battles. Oxhead and Horseface had nearly subdued Liu, and Ren had captured Lai and broken his crossbow, but she seemed to be looking for a way to restrain him. I felt Lin Yu pick up her blade before she walked up behind me and put her hand on my shoulder. The tip of her blade touched my back, right about where my heart would be. "Go ahead," I said. "Cement your family's legacy as a bunch of backstabbers. Why choose to be better when you could just follow the example that's been set, right? I'm sure on some level that absolves you of guilt in your mind, but we'll both always know the truth." I waited a moment to see how she would respond, but I was surprised to hear the blade slip from her hand and clatter to the ground. I looked back just in time to see Lin Yu fall to her knees and slam her fist into the dirt. I could feel my words were causing her to struggle with herself. She just needed one more push. "Pick yourself up, last blade of Ming Song. It's time to clean up your family's mess and start over, don't you think?" I asked. Lin Yu's eyes opened wide and she breathed out a growling sigh as she grabbed her blade and forced herself back to her fate. "Damon of Athens, are you always this insufferable?" she asked, smiling angrily to herself. "According to my friends? Yeah, usually," I said with a smirk. "Then we'd best not keep them waiting for you," she said smugly. "Yeah, the only problem is I have no idea how to stop this," I said, looking up and watching Sun attempt to engage Mei. Unfortunately, it seemed that her body was almost entirely incapable of being touched. Sun's blows passed right through her, but I counted us lucky that she was too distracted with trying to catch him to notice the rising sun to the east. "Me either, but we have to try," Lin Yu said, dashing ahead and leaping up to make a vicious slash at her mother's feet, but the giant goddess didn't even seem to notice. Oxhead and Horseface weren't far behind in joining the battle, but being that they couldn't jump as high as Lin Yu, they were basically even more useless than she was proving to be. I found myself biting the tip of my thumb as I desperately tried to puzzle out a way to even damage her. "Damon, do you have any rope?" Ren asked, trying to keep Lai from struggling out of her hold on him. I didn't bother responding because I didn't have any. Ren waited a few moments before saying, "Hello, Damon, I could use your help over here." I walked over silently, trying not to lose my train of thought. Without hesitating, I beheaded General Lai before also severing his arms and legs from his torso, just to ensure he wouldn't be getting back up. Ren was horrified and asked, "What the hell are you doing?" "Making sure a backstabber isn't standing behind us," I explained. Ren seemed surprised, but only scowled at me, seeming as though she disapproved of my methods. Just then, the sun finally peeked over the horizon, making Mei shield her eyes before hissing violently at the shining jewel of our solar system. She seemed to forget all about Sun Wukong and the others as she started drifting toward the east, rising higher as she went. "Damn it, we're running out of time," Sun said furiously. Sun landed atop a cloud and Lin Yu grabbed the others before leaping up to join him. Lin Yu, Oxhead, Horseface, and Sun Wukong all lined up as a last line of defense between Mei and the sun atop a cloud, but she hardly even seemed to notice them. Mei kept creeping closer as she drifted eastward, but then she raised a hand, seemingly trying to keep the sun out of her eyes. And then it hit me. Towdy had been immune to basically every attack as well, but there was one I knew for sure was able to damage it. I leaped up and joined Sun and the others as I made red lightning electrify my blade. Desperation the only thing letting me hold on to any hope. I knew the only way to find out if this would work was to test it, so I extended 2 fingers and fired a massive bolt of red lightning at Mei. Everyone was shocked when it flew right through her chest but electrified her body, making her cry out in agony. "That's it! We have to use lightning," I said, as Mei backed down, her attention shifting to us. Lightning? Lin Yu asked, seeming like the idea had struck a chord with her. She looked even more surprised when I electrified her weapon, and the weapons of Oxhead and Horseface as well. Towdy was a creature of darkness, and it looks like by absorbing him, she absorbed his weakness as well, I explained. Sun smacked his fists together with a crackle of electricity as an excited ha 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 came from deep in his chest. Not bad, kid. Not bad at all, he praised. But then he leaped into battle and punched May with an electrified fist so hard her head spun around before she fell backward, crashing down into the city below. Sun caught himself on a yellow cloud before he scratched the back of his head and said, "Whoops." Maybe hitting her weakness isn't enough. We have to find a way to separate them, Ren called up from the ground. I put a hand to my chin, not sure what I should do next. But I was surprised when Sun snapped his fingers with excitement. I've got an idea. Can you guys distract her for a few minutes? He asked, looking back to us. I nodded before the others could, and he gave us a strong thumbs up before flying up into the sky. I hope it's a good idea, Lin Yu said as she took up an aggressive stance. I guess we'll find out, I replied as I took an offensive stance too. Lin Yu smiled at me, and together we watched her mother get up. Crushed buildings mangled beneath her as she rose back into the sky. I fired another powerful bolt, but we were all surprised when she dodged it. May came rushing at us, but before Lin Yu or I could attack, Oxhead and Horseface leaped right off a cloud and plunged their electrified weapons into her body, making her scream in anguish and rage. She lashed out and slashed them with razor-like energy surrounding her hands, but Lin Yu and I barely had time to dodge as she followed up with another wild attack. Lin Yu leaped in and slashed her brutally across the face. But it seemed May was ready and retaliated, smashing her daughter's bones as she sent her plummeting toward the ground. But I didn't have any time to worry about her. May moved to attack me as well, ripping the clouds apart with her massive energy claws as I leaped from one cloud to the next to avoid her. After a few moments I was left with nowhere to go, but as I jumped to safety I remembered Jacob at the tournament, using fire to fly. I remembered correcting my fall with a burst of flame, but that wouldn't do what I wanted it to. So instead, I jumped and fired a massive bolt of lightning away from her, causing it to propel me forward toward May at ridiculous speed. I turned and spun into a vicious blow that would have killed anyone else, but despite my sword passing through her neck completely and her scream of great pain, her head remained attached to her body. I started falling to the ground, not sure how much more I could do. I was exhausted, but I knew I needed to keep fighting. I managed to land on my feet and jumped up to take a vicious slash at May's ankle. I hit her, but I was surprised when she used her other hoofed foot and tried to stomp on me. I needed to drop my sword to catch her foot, because Lin Yu, Oxhead, Horseface, and Ren were all close by. It took every drop of strength I had to keep her from crushing us, and Ren tried to help too, but it was no use. Just when my arms were about to give out, I was surprised when May's massive weight shifted and her foot lifted off of us. I looked up to see Sun holding a golden gourd bottle. He yanked the top off and poured a golden liquid down May's throat, but she pulled away from him and retched as she grabbed at her windpipe. Even as she started to scream, I could feel it was over. Just the tiny amount Sun had gotten into her mouth was already causing her to shrink. Sun joined Ren and I on the battlefield as Lin Yu pushed herself to her feet using her blade, her body broken and wounded. Her right arm in particular was hanging limp and bleeding badly. We all watched as May continued to shrink, but I was surprised when she continued shrinking past her original size. And when she was about the size of a child's doll, her whole body began to glow. Just then she burst with light, and from the brightness came Yang Wen, now not much larger than a regular man, Towdy, and everyone was surprised to meet Mei Ming Song, now in a human form. Her body was old and fragile, and she seemed to be struggling just to breathe. "You think this is over?" I heard Lai say, his bleeding corpse still laying in the dirt not far away. "We're not done yet. You false gods look down on my family. We'll never stop hunting you." "Yes, we will," Lin Yu said. "I'm done playing as a pawn for your sick ambitions. It's time for you to accept your death and give up on these dreams of an immortality you'll never deserve." May turned and opened her mouth to start speaking, but all that came from her throat was sand. We all watched in horror as May slowly disintegrated, turning to dust before our very eyes. "Our immortality is true. It will never end. Don't you see? Even now, as a bleeding head, I persist," Lai insisted. I was surprised when Yang Wen was the first to reply, saying, "Yeah, about that. and waving a hand. Bid by its master, a small, thin book flew from Lai's robes and into his hand. Yang Wen opened up the book and flipped to the page where there were many scratched-out names, written in writing so tiny I could barely see it. Yang Wen snapped his fingers and a feathered quill appeared, which he then used to write in several names. After rewriting their names into the Book of Souls, Yang Wen conjured a stamp and pressed it to Lai and Mei Ming Song's names. Lai went quiet, and Mei collapsed into a pile of sand, never to utter another word in the realm of the living. All that remained in the pile was a burning black soul with a hint of deep blue in the center. Towdy stepped up and crunched on her soul with sheer delight before doing the same to her husband's dark gray spirit. Well, now that that's settled, it's about time to decide what to do about you, Yang Wen said, looking to Lin Yu. But what about Towdy? I asked, noticing he seemed docile since being returned to his original form. He'll be returning to the underworld with me. He's really a harmless creature, but that stomach of his is nearly bottomless. I swear, I'd bet the only reason he came out in the first place was his gluttonous hunger for souls, he explained. I still don't even understand why there's a creature like him kept in the underworld in the first place, Ren remarked, seeming shaken by the events of the past few days. DU is called a prison, but it's honestly closer to a rehabilitation center of sorts, Yang Wen explained. If a soul serves its punishment in the afterlife, we let them move on into heaven. But if they refuse to repent, we serve the truly evil souls to old Towdy to keep them from becoming demons in the life beyond. Wait, so he's like a garbage bin, but for evil? Ren asked, making Towdy scale at her. That's crude, but not inaccurate, Yang Wen agreed. Towdy stomped a hoof and whinnied, but no one really seemed to pay much attention now that he wasn't a threat. So that just leaves the question, what do we do with you? Sun asked very seriously as he looked to Lin Yu. She glared at him a moment before looking away. I don't expect you to let me walk away. Do what you have to do, she said. Sun looked conflicted. As long as you agree not to cause any more problems, we'll let you go, I said, surprising them all. Well, that and you renounce your oath of revenge against my family, Sun added. Lin Yu had a faraway look in her eyes as she looked to the ground, but then she looked back and stared at her brother a few moments. I was surprised when she stepped up to me, sheathed her blade, pulled it and its scabbard from her sword belt, and handed them to me. I was once the last blade of Ming Song, but no longer. I swear on what little honor I have left, I'll never allow another member of my family to walk the path I was forced onto, so long as I live, she promised. Sun nodded strongly and said, Well, that's good enough for me. These people are going to be cleaning up this mess for quite a while, so if I were you, I'd gather up my brother and move on. But this is the only home I've ever known, Lin Yu said dejectedly, looking to the scorched rubble that was once her family estate. Then stay, and help them rebuild. I'm sure this town could use a strong pair of hands like yours right now, I told her, putting my new blade on my sword belt. Ren and the others nodded, seeming to think it was a good idea. Sun clapped the dirt from his hands and chuckled. Well, I'm glad this all wrapped up nicely. Yang Wen, will you be able to return Towdy to your realm all right, or could you use an extra pair of hands? He asked. I think I'll be all right. Thank you, son. I'll be sure to tell the Jade Emperor that we couldn't have done it without you, Yang Wen said pleasantly. By the way, what was that stuff? Ren asked, pointing to the golden gourd on Sun's hip. It's a type of wine from heaven, said to remove impurities. I wasn't totally sure if it would split Yang Wen from the others, but I'm glad I tried it at least. Sun chuckled. I wonder if the impurity was Mei Ming Song's soul, Ox had wondered aloud, but we never got an answer to his question. I actually found myself feeling a bit wistful at everyone getting their happy ending, so I turned and watched the rising sun as everyone got organized. But then everyone paused when we heard a voice from not far away call out, Is it safe to come out now? I couldn't help but smile as Zhao came out of his hiding spot, the puppy cradled safely in his arms. I felt relief for the first time in ages, knowing that everyone was all right. Better yet, I was finally able to relax a bit now that I'd managed to recruit the help of the Chinese pantheon. Other than that, we returned the puppy and Li Yu gave back Zhao Zai eventually. Unfortunately, those who were killed or had their souls eaten were gone for good, and there was nothing we could do for them. I spoke with the Jade Emperor one more time, confirming that they would help us when the time came. However, I actually got a bit of a bonus as well when he ordered Sun and Ren to come along with me on my journey to help recruit the Japanese pantheon. We grew quite close over our travels and had a good few adventures together, but none really worth telling when compared to this one. More often than not, it was either Sun solving our problem on his own, or him forcing me to solve them without him. Either way, that's the story of how I saved the world from having our sun eaten, keeping our light shining through the darkness. Alright guys, that's it. That's all I got for you. That was Godly Legacies, Lightning and Darkness. If you like this video, please subscribe. If you enjoyed the book, please buy it on Amazon, but there's no pressure. The reason I put these audiobooks out for free is so people who can't afford them can simply enjoy them. I'm the kind of person who I want to actually put my art out there for free, and I would much rather do it that way than have to make people pay for it. But you know how it is. If you want a physical copy, you can buy one. If you want the ebook, or you want to download the audiobook and listen to it, you're welcome to do that as well. Either way, thank you so very, very much for joining me on this adventure. I love this book, actually. When I was writing it, I wasn't super happy with it. But now that I've read it again a year later, man, I really like how this story turned out. And I know I'm patting myself on the back when I say that, but gosh, I just enjoy this story right out. Like, it's got everything I like about my series, and it's all wrapped up super nicely. But anyway, yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, or if you want to talk about the series, always feel free. You can send me an email at kaibontherenegade@gmail.com if you have feedback or suggestions for the series. But anyway, guys, I'm just an indie author, so any way you can support me would be extremely helpful. And thank you one last time so much for watching and listening. I know this was a bit of a journey for sure, but I really, really appreciate everyone who actually listened to it all the way through. Or even if you just started it, honestly, that's still pretty cool. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye. She also had a long cloak-like shawl in a checkerboard pattern of white-blue. I keep saying white-blue. She also had a long cloak-like shawl with a white. Damn it. She also had a long cloak-like shawl with a checkerboard. She also had a long cloak-like shawl with a checkerboard pattern of light blue and white. I turned back to face our enemies as I heard a set of footsteps. A foot of footsteps. It crashed through the tree canopy, and was supposed to electrify us both. So close. It crashed through the tree Yeah, like a bunk of buggies. Monk's hood, I said gently. Monk's hood, I said gently. And a black beard so narrow it could be confused for a needle. And a black beard so narrow it could because we haven't seen even one spirit. That's wrong. Hi, baby. Daddy's working right now. No, don't touch. Dad's not a toy. Son, Red said you know something. Son, Red said you know. Red. Son, Red. I keep saying Red. Son, Ren said you knew about sensing energy and... Son, Red... I wasn't going to take that lying down, so I got up. Play on words. I took a moment to check my chest and found it bloody, but the wound had already closed up completely. Damn it. That's what I get. Without warning, the scroll started... This is the wrong page. As I drifted through the air, I noticed the barrier crumbling around me and drifting into the air like... As I drifted through the... Oh, man. Drifting through the air twice in a row. Fuck. I apparently really need to invest in a thesaurus. As I drifted through the air, I noticed the barrier crumbling around me and drifting into the air like dust in the breeze. As I flew through the air, I noticed the barrier crumbling around me and drifting into the air. At first, I thought Zhao was unright. At first, I thought we were all a bit taken aback when General Lai called out, "Liu, get the jar and bring it here." Ren and Liu were born. So fucking redundant. I need to proofread this stuff better. Like, how could I, this one especially is so fucking glaring. We were all a bit taken aback. Ren and Liu were taken aback. It's a sentence away. It shouldn't be that fucking complex. Finally, Oh, hang on. That's the wrong voice. We stared at each other for a few moments before her expression softened, didn't she? We stared at each other for a few moments before her expression softened. I keep saying softened. It's softened. Damn it, we're running out of time. That's awful. Bid by its master, a small, thin book. Bid by its master, a small, thin book bid by its master, a small, thin book flew from... Oh, that was an ordeal, but it was good. It was worth it.